So let's go right into it. Joel, come on up. So this is the great Joel Benenson, you guys.
Oh, jeez.
And he is the great Joel Benenson. I'm really serious. Anybody who follows politics, I'm in San Francisco, so we don't follow politics closely. A lot of guys here in Washington do.
Just do it in a way different from the rest of the world.
But I will say this. Joel is part of the team that ran two of the most successful national political campaigns ever. You guys know that, with Jim Messina and David Plouffe. Joel doing all the polling.
David Axelrod.
And I get that guy Axelrod was involved, I guess, and a few other people. But the truth is, we got to know Joel about 5 or 6 years ago at Common Sense when we began looking at the issue of how, it was actually sort of your idea, Joel, about how you could use cell phones to cheat. We were looking at, because at Common Sense, we have 3 big platforms: Rate, Educate, Advocate. So we have our consumer platform, we have our big advocacy platform, and then we have our schools platform. And we were trying to look at how technology was going to transform classrooms. So this is before everything that we're going to talk about today was really starting to happen. And Joel said, and then Zeke Emanuel said, let's take a look at how kids are using cell phones to cheat in class. And it was phenomenal to see how that happened. And I think that's a good intro, because what we learned is basically what we're here to talk about today. Because of the work of a lot of the people who are here today, we are very lucky to have who we have here. We are at a real tipping point in transforming the classrooms in this country. We are. And we're either going to do it well or not well. And that has to do with, as Jack laid it out really well, there's going to be the infrastructure, the wiring, there's going to be devices, there's going to be content, and Common Sense on that one is building this rating system called Graphite. It's going to help teachers and superintendents and everybody pick the right content. And then there better be really good teacher training and professional development, so we get that piece right too. So that's happening. But the truth is, if we don't also ensure that students and their families feel that the information is being used for the right purposes, and that it's private, and they keep all their personal information private, then this whole thing could blow up, and all the stuff that we're all working on together could go for naught. That's actually why we at Common Sense started focusing on student privacy. And so, other than bringing this great group of people together to really find out what you think, we have initiated legislation in California, which don't worry, can be amended if you guys don't like where it currently is. But we wanted to bring the smartest people we know who represent all the stakeholders in this together. But we first wanted by telling you what the public thinks, which is where the great Joel Benenson comes in. So Joel, you did a poll for us. It's the first one that we know of on student privacy. What did you find?
Well, what we try to do is uncover what's going on beneath the surface sometimes, not just take people's temperature, and then we use that to illuminate the overall data. So, we start out unsurprisingly with a high level of concern among both parents and non-parents, and we did 800 interviews across the country. They were all registered voters, but we broke out parents and non-parents, and we heard almost universal concern among parents and non-parents about the targeting by marketers to kids with data that they have by kids. They're very concerned about that, very high level of concern. Almost 90% of parents and non-parents were both concerned, but more importantly, the number who said they were very concerned was also in the 60s. And that wasn't much of a surprise. But we also learned during the course of the study that parents are largely unaware that there's any data, personal data in particular, about their kids being accumulated. Height, weight, religion, whatever, a range of income levels about the kids in their schools, that's being accumulated and in some cases contracted out to other companies to manage. And parents were extremely concerned about this, as were non-parents across the board. So not only were they concerned about it, but there was almost no awareness about it. In fact, only about a third of parents or non-parents had heard anything all about this. And roughly between 60 and 67% between parents and non-parents said they'd heard not much or nothing at all about it. So this collection of data that's taking place about kids, and not just their grades and their performance in schools, but about who they are individually and personally being collected, was something that parents were unaware of. Not surprisingly, because of those first 2 data points, there is a very strong reaction against the sharing of that data with companies that could use it to target for advertising. But there was a very high level of concern when people found out that most of the agreements with these companies do not include currently and this was information that was provided to us based on the work that Common Sense had done, most of these agreements do not restrict the use of that personal data. And that, you can imagine, drove parents' concerns up even higher. They believed that a series of steps should be taken, and there was support among parents, non-parents, and across a partisan spectrum. We also asked people whether they were Democrats, Republicans, or independents, a strong support for basically transparency, parents being notified whether the school is accumulating data about their kids, that the schools would have to notify them. A very strong desire also at the 90% level for tighter security measures to make sure that the security systems where this technology exists in schools can't be hacked and can be protected. They also wanted to make it illegal for schools or companies that accumulate this data to sell it to advertisers that would target kids with it. So they really favored intervention there to protect the sale of this for advertising purposes, and also wanted to make sure that it couldn't be used by for any online targeting to kids by advertisers. So you have a kind of perfect storm here around public opinion and attitudes among parents and non-parents on this. Very low awareness this is taking place, very high concern that it's taking place, and a very strong desire for quick and immediate steps to protect their kids from advertisers and their kids' data being used to target them online.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask Joel one other question. We're going to go to a panel in a minute with folks who've been doing this on the ground level. I have a question, which, are there other slides? Are there any slides that show the data? I don't know.
I wasn't moving them, but I guess they have them there.
Okay. Oh, how do you? Boy, if I'm running the clicker, we're in big trouble, guys.
And by the way, in case you don't know, Jim, it's on that screen in front of you.
Here, Dennis, you can run the clicker. Anyway, I want to ask Joel a question, then I want to take two from that, and then Joni, let's run our panel. My big question to you is, Joel, is this just totally across the board, Republican, Democrat, men and women? Is this like one of those ones where everybody is pretty much in the same camp and there's not a big difference?
Pretty much. The one place where you saw any variation was on strong support for the measures I described below. But even there, you had a variation from about 70% support for these among Democrats, going down to about 58% among Republicans. If you want me to go to that slide, you can keep going. Go to this one. So if you look at this, you see you've got a range from 70% to 91% support on all these steps that I outlined. There's another one in there. If you go to the next one, you'll see it among Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And you can see the blue line are Democrats and the red line are Republicans, and the kind of yellow line in the middle are independents. And you see these all go down. You don't see a tremendous amount of variation here on this one. I think there's one more. If you go to the next one, it may not be. Okay. There's some data where the variation is about 12 points between Democrats and Republicans, but it remained high on all of them.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience want to ask, as long as we have Joel here, does anybody have a particular question they want to ask Joel from this? Okay, the one thing I'll say to you guys, in trying to have this conversation happen and move it forward at the same time, that's our overall strategy at Common Sense, is we want the conversation to happen. We want all the smart people in this room and around the country to get this right now, because we have a chance to get it right. But we also believe in pushing it forward. That's why we did legislation in California, because we also want to push, even if it isn't perfect. We want to get this moving. What's your yeah, Bill?
The issue seems to be not whether or not companies are selling data and to advertise to kids and to some kids. We just don't see that. The real issue is storage and what these companies are permitted to use the data for their own purposes. That's the real line where there's a tension between schools and companies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only bottom feeders that are looking to get this data
Yeah.
to actually crassly market to a child or to try to sell to some list or something like that, which is easily resolvable. The real fundamental problem is what can you use this data for and what standards of security?
Right.
Joel, did you find that number?
There's nothing in the data that suggests the concern levels wouldn't be as high as that. I think parents have no problems with schools accumulating that data, having a database company have access to the data, as long as it's being used for educational purposes that relate and that protect the privacy of their kids. What the concern was that Common Sense came to us about is some of these agreements have no restrictions in them that relate even to advertising. So while there may be bottom feeders out there now, it may not be a concern. One of the things we wanted to look at is ahead of the curve a little bit. Should these agreements have restrictions on them? Overwhelmingly, they feel we're okay with this, but put those restrictions on and let me know what data you're accumulating about my kids.